little bit about me. My name is Reba. First and foremost, I'm a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a proud member of Community Church. I am a mom. My daughter Savannah is going to be 25. And I am an auntie, and I have been a public servant my whole life. Ever since I was 21, I worked in victim advocacy for 17 years. And then for the past 16 years, I've worked in health and human services. And I think what I love the most about that is I've had this amazing opportunity to help people at their most challenging times and to serve as a guide as they navigate life's peaks and valleys. I was raised Catholic, and so faith was always a big part of my life, but I felt like I was kind of going through the motions until someone invited me to a different church that I went to before Community. And it was at a time where I think when I first really started to notice that the role he played in my life, it was during one of the darker times in my life when there was a lot of family strife and struggle going on. And as I reflect back, and I certainly reflect on this past year of my life, which certainly was the most traumatic, and I've experienced significant trauma in my life, from a childhood to teenager and adult, but this past year included a lot of trauma and a lot of change, and there was a pandemic. So we all were living through the pandemic, which was scary and impacted people a lot. So sometimes I feel a little selfish talking about how personal things impacted me. But when I look back and I think of some of those very dark times during that, and certainly moving here and sitting in this chair is where I processed a lot of them. And I think through this journey, what I learned the most about Christ and his role in my life is there were times when I was sitting in this chair and I would feel, I felt so broken, and I felt like there was no air, like I couldn't breathe. Not that it was like 911 call emergency, it was 911 spiritual of that component, where I was just like, I couldn't get air. And I remember sitting here and just feeling like everything was falling apart in my life. And it was at that moment that I could just feel his presence to breathe in my lungs and fill my lungs with air. During that same time, during this past year, my mind was going in 1,000 directions. I couldn't keep things straight. I was overwhelmed. I was in crisis, but I still had to go to work. I still had to be the helper to everybody else. I needed to be the support to my daughter, to friends, family. I needed to function. I needed to pay my bills. So during those times when I couldn't feel like I could even think straight, he cleared my mind and gave me hope. And gave me hope that although I felt that the day felt very dark, the next day was not going to be darker. And I liken the feeling when I talked about not being able to breathe. And I kept using this scenario, and I couldn't think of what it was called, and I finally looked it up. With a fireplace, the bellows that you use to push? Well, it was like someone was pushing the bellow the opposite direction, sucking the air out. And I realized, because I was giving so much power to the strongholds in my life, and that all through my life, I think of the different things that happened, and I would say, oh, I believe in God. But there's a difference between believing him and believing in him. And during the time when I liken this past year with the feeling pain, I have never felt pain like that. When you think of every fiber of your body on the outside, on the inside, on your heart, your mind, your soul, just feels broken. Like if someone took a vase, if I took that vase my flowers were in, and I just shattered it against the wall, and it went into 1,000 pieces. It was at that time, sitting in this chair, listening to K-Love, because I don't have a TV. I vowed I would not get one for a year. And I remember kept hearing the music, Run to the Father and Broken. And all my life in society, so much we're told, it's not okay to be broken. And you just have to buck up and go forward. And it was at that time, for the first time in my life, that I feel like I fully, sitting in this chair, fully submitted to our Father. I mean fully, and it wasn't pretty. And when they talk about run to the Father, I'm talking like a lightning sprint, which the size of my apartment, you didn't have to go far. But I remember that. And then it's like, you know what? I am broken, but I'm not always going to be that way. And I also realized when I looked back on my life and on those other dark moments and on those challenging times, I can think back to other times I felt broken, never to the extent of this, but what I did is I picked up those pieces and put them back where I thought they should go. And that's why the healing never happened. That's why the brokenness never fully repaired. And it wasn't until I fully submitted, as challenging and as painful as that was to be that broken, once I fully did, and I knew that the only way I would be whole again, the only way I would not continue to be broken in my life, is I had to submit and I had to turn it over to the Father and trust that He was going to pick those pieces up and He was going to put those back where He knew they should be. And where I erred my whole life is thinking I could do it. I should do it. Well, that's just how we do it. That's what we're told. So for the first time ever, He put them back. And all those pieces aren't there yet, because I know that that's a journey. But I can tell you with full honesty to the core of my soul that I have never known until then what it feels like to feel this inner healing and this inner happiness. And when you feel that, when you wake up, you look at the trees, the trees, the birds, everything you look at differently. When I think of being in church in worship, which I love, it's just like those arms just go up and they're there, and it's just to take it all in. And in the past, I would have looked at, wow, you've lived your whole life with not knowing this. And I'm like, you know what? But I am 54 years old and I know it now. And I know this was a really long-winded answer, but I had to give it all, because I had to say all that, because this is so, to me, He has meant my Savior, my Redeemer, my hope, my promise, and the healer of my brokenness. And when I think of all these things, I think of past challenges, and I think of this past year. Some of those times sitting in here, moving into a new apartment, I just felt almost like I was frozen, like I was paralyzed. Not in the physical sense, but just in the emotional sense. And the hope and the love and the forgiveness and the acceptance is why it was so important to me to share my story. To me, it is such an honor to be able to share truly what the Lord has meant to me and what He has done for me in my life. Absolutely, there's a lot. And this I probably haven't shared with anybody at Community. I was a victim of childhood sexual abuse, and I experienced a sexual assault when I was 15 years old. And then I experienced domestic violence in my first marriage. So there's all those things that are like, and when you never repair, it just compounds and builds. And then I was married in 2018. I had been divorced for 14 and a half years, really hadn't dated, it was hard for me to trust. And then I met my now ex-husband, Jim. And obviously not knowing how to communicate, there were many things that I failed in. There were many things we both failed in. And one of the most painful things is that, to me, the vows were a covenant and we took them before God. And I so wanted my marriage to work and to work on it. And Jim did not. Jim didn't want to, he wanted all the other benefits of a wife. Whether it was, not a wife, that's right. I don't want you as my wife. I only want you as my very good friend, were Jim's words. So that was very challenging. And it was, I think that's probably what made me realize how broken I had been for so long, because I didn't know how to come back after that. We were in the pandemic. We wore masks, and that was helpful. And again, I know that sounds selfish because my heart goes out to everybody impacted by their families and coworkers and loved ones. But that was a cover to help mask the deep pain I felt. And I knew the people who knew me well, my coworkers, people at community church, I knew that they could see it. How could you not? I'm always the happy, cheery, hello, welcome. And I was kind of coming and leaving fast. I was exiting. I remember one time Ethan was singing, and it was like 3 words into the first song, and I had to go sob my heart out in the bathroom. And as painful as that was, I am so grateful for that, because walking into a building and a church family of love and acceptance, and so many people would pray for me. And, Pastor Adam, who was, I can never, their words are never, that can never truly express the gratefulness for guiding me through the roller coaster and the pain and the journey and challenging me. And that is with God's presence and my church family is what saved me. Because those times are pivotal times in people's life. Those can break you. They can lead you to addictions. And I've struggled with food addictions my whole life. That's been part of where I've controlled. They can lead to all types of things. And were it not for my true belief and faith and willing to put it all out there. And when I say submit, that night here, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all. But I knew that had to happen. If I was ever going to be able to love myself again, when you experience trauma, and you experience multiple times, and you experience it most recently when you think you've arrived, you've found the love of your life, everything's good, and when your trust is not strong, and then that trust gets broken again. And don't get me wrong, I own my responsibility as well for the failure of that marriage. But I knew, like this, I did not want to feel the way I felt. And I knew that the only way was through him, was through our Father. That was the only way I was going to get to a different place.